And now, everyone, please put your hands together and give a warm welcome to your host, John Yandell.
Hey everybody, thanks for being here. Good hello to our online folks as well that are checking in and watching on the live stream. We appreciate you joining us today. My name is John Yandell. I'm the Associate Course Director for Advanced Session Recording. And we're here today just to kind of learn more about how to stay relevant in this ever-changing industry that we're involved in, the entertainment industry, recording industry, mixing industry, sound industry. How can we be relevant in that? Joining me today is Leslie Brathwaite. Nice round of applause. And Tremaine Williams is joining us as well. Both of these gentlemen, Hall of Fame recipients, and joining us today just to add to our flavor here in this discussion. So, Leslie, let's start with you real quick. Just tell me a little bit about the changes you've seen in the industry since you've actually been a part of it. What have you seen that's... What do you think has stayed consistent, and then what do you think has changed?
Well, a lot has changed. I graduated in 1992 from Full Sail, recording arts degree, and a lot has changed since then. The way we listen to music, the way we consume music, the way music is marketed,
right?
The type of music, the things that are being, different eras of when the content of the music, the messages, everything about it has changed.
Right.
And so a lot of the changes have centered around technological advances, where we went literally from tape machines and records and cassettes, and I'm sure some of these kids in here probably never seen a cassette. Probably some of you have.
Or a DAP.
Right. Yeah, and then now it's all digital. It's like I said, music is distributed differently. The way we consume it. So it's streaming platforms now. Even the way sales are tabulated and awards and all that kind of stuff is based on streams instead of sales and physical sales. And so it's pretty much everything about it has changed.
Now, what do you see as the constant, though? What are some of the things that are just basics that haven't changed?
I think the basics are you can't fool your audience. Either your stuff is good or it's not.
Right.
Even though, and I preach this all the time, even though the gear changes, the craft is still the same. Right. And I tell people a lot of times, don't learn the gear, learn the craft, because the gear changes. And I shouldn't say don't learn the gear. Don't focus on learning just the gear. A lot of times people are in their heads about what button does what and what thing and this new thing that I'm using in Ableton and so, and all that is important. But more so, learn the craft.
Right.
Because as the gear changes, the craft is still the same.
Yep.
You still got to get an artist. You still got to record the material. You still got to mix the material. You still got to promote the material. It's just done. All of those things are done differently, but they are still all done.
Right. And the physics of sound stays the same, right? That just continues. We just find different ways to manipulate it.
Yeah.
Right? And how we
Exactly.
do it. So now, Tremaine, in your line of work, you're involved in a lot of production and live sound things. How do you see the change happening there in your side of the industry?
Well, I've only been doing that for 5 or 6 years now. Mm-hmm. And just in that small window of time, I'm seeing it's now becoming an immersive experience because the record sales aren't this and that. They have to make their money on the road now.
Right.
So now it's how can I give you the best experience if you're going to pay top dollar for this ticket? So like Roger Waters and all these other acts, they're figuring out how to do surround in all these arenas. And my friend does playback for them. And he's sending out tons of outputs because this is going to the back of the arena and like audio is flying around you, and it's just an entire experience now instead of just going to a concert, stereo speakers, and it's just loud.
Yeah, not what it used to be, right?
No.
That's amazing. Yeah, so I assume the answer is kind of going to be the same, but the consistency for you, what have you seen remaining kind of the same as you've progressed in the industry?
Oh, man. I mean, this thing is like, it's changing. Like every day, I'm trying to think what stays the same. It's the skill set it's the basic physics of audio and all that kind of stuff. But like he said, the technology is just really just every day. This thing is changing, and it's changing really fast. And trying to keep up
Right.
is a whole job within itself.
Right. Gear especially, just something new every 3-4 months. There's something new coming out, new plugins that show up.
Yeah, even on the live side, like our front of house guy is using like universal audio stuff, and like we can now speak the same language as the plugins that we use in the studio.
Yeah, that's cool.
We can now use them on the road. Before it was you have the console and outboard gear.
Right.
And now we're sitting here talking plugins with the front of house guy because they can run the same exact stuff we can.
That's
which also helps create the experience of this is what the record sounded like. This is what we used. Now you can use the same thing to help deliver that sound to the audience.
Well, no, our other Hall of Fame graduate, Sean Spieler, like his job was to sit in front of Madonna and make sure that what she was hearing on stage was what she heard on the album. That that's what she was hearing in her ears, you know. So that's kind of interesting. Great. Well, Leslie, what in terms of gear, just to kind of talk about gear, where do you see in the studio that's changed for you? Like, what do you feel like you have to stay on top of to be relevant?
Definitely, one of the core principles of staying relevant is always be willing to adapt to whatever new things come out. A lot of engineers I've seen in this game where, like I said, in the 90s, we were working on tape machines and mixing on large format consoles. And I've seen a lot of engineers who didn't want to let go of that method, and they lost a lot of work because of it. And so you have to be willing to adapt, willing to change how you're comfortable doing things, and be uncomfortable for a little while and learn the new way. And so now, like I used to be one of those engineers that mixed on large format consoles and had every single input, output spread out, and then I learned to transition over into mixing in the box. And for those of you who may not know what in the box means, it means mixing totally on just the computer, just Pro Tools, plugins, the whole nine. And I wasn't using any physical outboard gear anymore. And you have to learn to adapt to the new things. And one of the things I love about, coming back and giving back to you guys, to the students, is I learn just as much from you guys as you guys may learn from me, because I have tenure, but what you guys have is you're getting the opportunity to learn on brand new equipment, brand new stuff. I learned FL Studio from a Full Sail student. I learned Ableton from a Full Sail student. So it's about always being open to learning and playing around with new gear and being not just open, but embracing the new gear, and it's finding a way to incorporate that new gear into your workflow. Because if you don't, you'll get left out. The rate at which I mix now, I couldn't mix at this rate on a large format console.
Right.
I just wouldn't be able to.
Right, because you can kind of carry everything with you, right? It's like
I got everything in a bag.
Exactly.
I was in DC last week, and I was able to pull up a mix in my hotel room, print a clean version. I got here, I was able to jump in the studio, pull up a Cardi B song, and do a clean version on that. And I have to be able to keep up with, and I got artists, and the other thing is they're in different parts of the world.
Right.
So Cardi may be calling me from somewhere where it's 9 o'clock in the morning for her, and it might be 3 o'clock in the morning for me. And so I just got to be ready to open up laptop, plug in UAD, and
go for it, right?
Yeah.
So now, in terms of that, though, in terms of traveling, having stuff that you carry with you, how has that changed your monitoring process, like headphones or speakers, or is there something that's involved in that? Tremaine, you got that?
Yeah, well, since I spend most of my time on the road,
Right.
The cool thing about my Mariah gig is me and the band, we were all studio rats before we got on the road. So we're very much gear junkies and trying to figure out how we can condense the setup but keep the quality the same. And so that's constantly a conversation in the dressing room. And if you walk in our dressing room, it'll be 6 laptops, 6 Apollos, and half of us have little iLoud speakers.
Oh, right.
And we've all been trying out what's the smallest speaker, the lightest speaker we can travel with because we travel so much. But what will give us the quality that we need to be able to hear the bottom end. The top needs to be clean. We need to have enough EQ adjustments on the back where if we set it on this desk versus we're going through all of that because we're still working on records on the road. And like you said, we have to turn that stuff in if they call at 3 a.m.
Right.
and it has to sound like they want it to sound. So
Right.
how can I get accurate monitoring? So we figured out how to condense our setup, and anytime one of us finds something new, we go back and report it to the rest of the group.
Right.
And everybody will go try it out, and it might not work for you, it might. But that's how we all kind of work together, and it's part of staying relevant is one guy finds it, don't have the ego and be like, well, I didn't find that, I'm not going to use that. It's like, no, that's cool. Where'd you get it from?
Right.
Can I try it out? Because if you're not working tonight, let me use those speakers tonight and see if I like them, and then I'll buy some. But that's kind of
We were in the studio last night, and Tremaine needed some headphones. And he was like, man, you got some headphones in your bag? And I handed him my headphones. He was like, oh, I use the same headphones. And so it's able, we all kind of work the same way. We all kind of gravitate towards the same, gear. And there's cheat codes too. So for me, like, for instance, I drive a Cadillac Escalade, and I reference a lot of my music in my truck. Well, if I'm out of town, like let's say last year or year before when I was mixing Cardi B's Invasion of Privacy album, I mixed a lot of it at Circle House in Miami. And so when she flew me down there, the first thing I asked them for is, can you rent me a Cadillac? And so it wasn't that I was being extra. I explained why I needed the Cadillac.
Right.
Rent me a Cadillac Escalade, please, because I'm used to that system. So when I'm checking the mixes, when I'm mixing in a studio that I'm not really used to, I have something that I'm used to. I can set my ground knowing that when I jump in that truck, it's going to sound like my truck.
Right.
And I know how to reference those mixes. So there's little cheat codes that you can kind of figure out of how to keep some level of consistency when you're traveling.
Right. I was going to say the probably one of the hardest things to check would be the low end. How do you find
especially in
that,
headphones, yeah.
that
So
low
that's
end?
why, and I made that point. And they didn't think I was being extra, but I wanted to make sure I explained it so they didn't think like, okay, Leslie's tripping, like he got to have a Cadillac. And, no, I explained it thoroughly. Like, no, that would really be helpful so that I can reference the low end, so I can know exactly where these mixes are sitting.
What would you say to the students in terms of as they're graduating Full Sail, they've already kind of experienced the gear here, but maybe they'll find a place that's not quite as well geared up, so to speak. What could you encourage them with in terms of getting into that situation? How can they be prepared?
And that's why I always,
still be
again,
relevant.
revert to preaching about learning the craft as opposed to the gear. Because just like in the example I just used, some of you may not be able to afford a Cadillac Escalade right out of school. So you may have, give me a car,
A Kia?
A who?
Chevy Malibu.
Yeah, you may have a Chevy Malibu. And if you get used to that Chevy Malibu, that's what you reference, and that's what your ears are used to. So when somebody fly you out of town, if you're still driving a Chevy Malibu, try to rent a Chevy Malibu. Yeah. Don't try to rent the Escalade. That ain't going to help you out. Yeah. The Chevy Malibu is what you want because that's what you reference to. So it's about, again, understanding the craft of it, which is it's not about trying to find a system that sounds amazing. It's trying to find a system that you're used to. So whatever you're used to, if you got the Walmart headphones and you get used to them and you can get good mixes from them, that's cool. Nobody, we not judging you. Yeah. So it's about doing what you can with your budget, with where you are, and again, focus on the craft of it, not the gear itself.
Tremaine, that kind of brings up another good point along this line. So we really encourage the students in our advanced session, to reference tracks. So to that point, what would you say in terms of the importance of doing that, referencing what's already out there?
It's funny, man. Me and him have a lot of conversations, and that's like a big one that we have. And so you're always looking for what's the best and like how can I constantly evolve. And so I was sitting in with him when he was mixing some stuff in the Audio Temple, and when he sat down, he played the Only song from Nicki Minaj and Chris Brown and Lil Wayne, and I was like, why that song? And he was like, the bottom end is great. Like, just the mix for me to be able to sit down in any room, I know where this sits. So I was like, huh. So I added to my playlist of I have a playlist on Tidal called Speaker Check.
There you go.
And so I added that, and then he named another song. I added that one as well. So now, and again, the guys I work with, we have an ongoing speaker check. Anytime we find a song, we text each other and we're like, hey, check out this song and see if it fits for your speaker check playlist. It has a lot of bottom, because the bottom is what you're gonna have the problem with when you're moving around and trying to get consistency.
Right.
So I now know what only sounds like in any room. Like, I know what that bottom's supposed to feel. It's not even sounding as well, it's feeling it and like being like, okay, I know that vibration, or I'm missing that vibration on the floor in my leg. Like, I can feel it a certain way.
Right.
So I literally have a playlist of speaker check songs to kind of just be like, okay, I'm checking this on this speaker, or I'm checking this. This sounds funny. Let me run to this song.
Right.
And it's an ever-growing list. And certain songs just provide certain things.
Important, yeah. Referencing is important. I know for Darren, who's one of our instructors here also, he really emphasizes checking on the computer speakers, that things translate, because most people are listening either on their computers, laptops, and earbuds, and always referring back to and checking on those as well. So.
Yeah, interestingly enough, so Beyonce, that's her mode of listening to anything, is she checks it on her laptop speakers. She gives notes on mixes on the laptop speakers.
Wow.
She never listens on studio speakers. And the reason she does that is because she travels so much. She needs to have a frame of reference that she can always count on. Mm-hmm. And the only frame of reference that she can 100% always count on is the laptop speakers.
Wow.
Because she's usually on her plane, on a helicopter, somewhere going, she's moving so much that's the one constant that she can just carry, and she knows exactly what things sound like on the laptop speakers. So because of that, whenever I'm mixing her records and I'm always sending her stuff, I always check them on the laptop speakers because I want to hear what she's going to hear.
Right. How important do you guys think it is to stay up to date on your OS, your plugins, all of it? I mean,
did you see all those emails that went out when Catalina came out?
A ton of them.
All the plugin companies.
Don't do it.
All the audio
Don't stay
companies.
too up to date.
Yeah, like if you have your system and it's running smooth, and it's not like on some I have to buy a new laptop tomorrow or whatever, kind of rock with what you got.
Yeah, I would definitely say in that arena, that's one of the things, because I'm an early adapter. I'm always trying to get the new. I'm one of those people. But I will tell you, if your operating system and your Pro Tools and your plugins and everything is working fine and rocking well, my rule of thumb is I typically don't upgrade until I have to, until I'm starting to miss out on some features, or my computer start acting crazy, or I'm not compatible with everybody else. Right. So like if everybody else is on Catalina and I'm still on, I think right now, where am I? I think I'm in Mojave, I believe.
Mojave,
Yeah, I think I'm on Mojave right now, and I don't plan on upgrading. I might miss the whole Catalina run.
Yep.
and I'm good, yeah.
It's tough because I know a lot of plugins still, I don't think, are compatible yet with Catalina.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
like you
tough.
said, a ton of emails went out,
Yeah. So you got to watch that. Well, I think we're about ready for some Q&A. So anybody out there have a question they'd like to ask?
I got one. What?
Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming. I'm Billy Sands, and I was a music production graduate in 2016. I do actually have a question for you guys. So, are you with any sponsorships, or like when you like buy gear, like you have to buy like certain gear, or are you completely independent of like all that? So like, if you're allowed to say.
No, it's cool. I mean, we're both endorsed by plug-in companies, but if you limit yourself to the only thing that they make, then that's not fair to yourself. So we both use other companies. It's basically whatever it takes to get the job done. And I do, like, I'm with UA, and I use a lot of UA stuff because I get it for free. So it's there, and it's available, and it's good quality stuff, but I also use a lot of Wave stuff and Valhalla and everything else. Like, whatever it takes to get the job done, I might not... It's literally whatever the song calls for. So I'm not just going to limit myself to who gives me free stuff or who I'm endorsed by. I might put that in some pictures for Instagram because that's the form of currency we operate on is,
right.
social currency. But when I'm working, no way I could just not use anything else.
And when I was first talking to Waves about my endorsement, that was one of the things that was big for me. Is one of the first conversations I had was I don't want to be inauthentic, so I will make sure even in a Waves presentation, I tell them, is it okay to bring up the fact that I use UAD for this particular thing or that particular? I'm not going to front like I use Waves for every single thing. And they're fine with that because that's part of the experience is understanding that there's a place for all the plugins, all the plugin companies. So, but yeah, I would suggest that the way to navigate that is just be authentic. Like Tremaine said, we use different things for different purposes.
Great. Got one back here.
Hi, Leslie. Hi, Tremaine. My question for you is, how has being flexible with your revenue streams given you a more rounded knowledge of the business, and how has that expanded your personal brands?
Being flexible with what? I'm sorry?
Your revenue streams.
Oh, yeah. That's actually probably very high up on the list of if we were to list out a few key bullet points of how to stay relevant in the music industry, that's very high up on the list. That's probably number one, to be honest with you, is learning how to flow with the economic temperature of what's going on. So, I'll give you a perfect example, and Tremaine can relate. In the 90s, labels was giving money away. Like, I could just send in an invoice, nobody would question my invoice, and I'll get a check in a few days. And we were charging ridiculous amounts of money, and I was making ridiculous amounts of money. And then in the early 2000s, that changed. And labels started getting a little more stringent because their sales started dropping, start turning from mechanical sales of the physical CDs to that was shrinking. And then, like Tremaine said, more artists now had to start relying on the tour stuff. Yeah. And then you start seeing these 360 deals where the label now can profit from more than just the record sales. Those 360 deals, the essential component of a 360 deal is to be able to profit on more than just the physical sale of the CDs. So it trickles down. So like the engineers and the producers, we now have to adjust our rates. You know, when I was getting, $5 and $10 grand per mix, I had to kind of adjust that to like 3,500 and, a little down. And you have to understand that climate or you won't survive. I know a lot of people who stuck to their rates and was like, nope, this is what I'm charging. And a lot of them don't get work today. And you got to understand that if you got an independent artist that only got $1,500, if I'm used to charging $5,000 per mix, I'd rather make a little bit of money than none.
100% agree.
There you go. 100%. We have an online.
Yes, so Matt, who is an RA student joining us from Winter Park, would like to know if UAD is primarily what's being used today. And also, you had mentioned a reference playlist, and he was wondering if that is publicly available.
That's good. We should probably do that.
Okay.
Ain't
no secrets.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I'll on my IG and my Twitter, I'll move that playlist over to Apple Music and Spotify, so y'all can. We do it on Tidal because we do it on Tidal because that's the best quality. Like you can get master quality on there versus the other stuff. It isn't as clean.
Right. And let's be clear. Let me say this one thing. That playlist can be helpful to you because you get to see what we're referencing and the kind of songs we're referencing. But also remember, it's still, at the end of the day, important to focus on what you reference and what's important to you and what you've been hearing your whole life or what you've been listening to and fall in love with the sound of. All of us don't like the same things. Yeah. You may hear The Only Song by Nicki Minaj and be like, this is awful. Like, I don't even like this song. I don't even like the low end. Yeah. So focus on the things that you like, that speak to you. When you heard, we've all heard a mix that we were like, man, that mix sounds incredible. Yeah. Focus on that, whatever that thing is for you. So yes, the playlist can be helpful and it can help you to see what us as professionals use, but also don't negate your own instincts and your own things. Right. And then the UAD question.
And we just had this conversation yesterday at the Tech Expo where I was like, yo, everybody is grabbing an Apollo right now. Like it's now the equivalent of what was an inbox when we were kind of, it was earlier on. In the digital stuff. So I think, yeah, UAD is all over the place, and it's a great interface for a great price, and they're constantly evolving and remaining relevant in the industry with the Luna stuff and everything else.
Right.
They're trying to stay ahead of the game, which I think is a great thing for all of us. Like, they're not just content in being what they are right now. They're like, what can we do next to help the consumers and help the industry grow?
Really
so I
good
think that's
company.
the running trend right now is definitely.
But it's kind of like Leslie said too, you know, it's what the tool is for the song, and you said that too, Tremaine, just what is the tool for the song and what's proper. So UAD may not be fit every situation, but
And
it's
I will say, just on a
great tool.
personal note, for me, and I don't have a UAD endorsement, but I will say wholeheartedly, for me, UAD is probably single-handedly responsible for my transition from a large format console and using outboard gear to mixing in the box. Because UAD was the first company that made plugins that sounded just like the gear. And I was blown away by how much the plugins actually sounded like the real gear. And I was like, oh, I could really make this transition. I could really start mixing in the box. So UAD was the company that was certainly responsible for me just jumping in and making that full transition from mixing on large format to mixing in the box.
very cool.
And I do want to say, because their stuff is expensive, like their plugins, like let's not front. So if you can't do it, don't like go broke trying to get it. Like that means you're just not ready for it yet. But
Right.
it's an expensive dive. You might be able to get the Apollo, then you can't afford the plugins. So just kind of balance yourself. You might not be there yet, but don't break your neck trying to get it because we're using it right now.
Right. No, I hear you. Another question over here.
How you guys doing? My name is Zeta REIT, one of the best entertainers and songwriters in Orlando and in Full Sail.
All right.
How you
All
guys
right.
doing?
All right.
So my question for you guys is, I'm sorry, man. I pay a lot of money for tuition. So my question is, you know, you guys work on a lot of albums and stuff. My question was, what are some of the things that you noticed while the albums that you work on, streaming and, you know, commercial success aside, what are some of the things that you noticed that resonate with people and, you know, what makes an album that can sit with people a lot?
Okay, can you do me a favor and have a seat?
I got you.
Thank you. We got to follow protocol first and foremost. We can't not follow protocol and expect to have success. So before we answer your question, we got to address the fact that that's not okay. If somebody's asking you to follow protocol, you got to follow protocol. That's the first key to your success. You will not be successful in this world, regardless of what you came here to learn, if you don't follow protocol. I agree. All right, now let's get to your question. What was your question again? And I ain't being funny, I'm just trying to show you that in life, people aren't even gonna care about what you're talking about if you don't do things the right way. And I think that was an important lesson for all of y'all. You gotta do things the right way. We can't just do what we wanna do and expect to get the results we want in life. It does not work that way. Clear?
Facts.
So, I wasn't even paying attention to your question because you were so out of line just now. Let's get to your question now.
All right, so my question was, what are some of the things that you've noticed with albums that you've worked on, you know, outside of streaming and plaques and awards and all of that? What are some of the things you've noticed that are in an album that sticks with people longer and resonates and has people listening to it longer?
It's different things for different albums, I would say. I think what makes what we do special is we can't always box it up and describe it and bottle it up and sell it as a formula. I think every album, every hit album, every formula has something different. There's albums I worked on, I couldn't have told you in a million years that they were gonna be hits, and some I kind of saw it coming. And every recording or album has its own special, unique thing. So I think that's what makes what we do special is we can't really sit here and bottle it up and sell it as a product of this is how you're successful. I think every single thing has its own special formula. And that's not a cop-out answer, that's just the truth.
That's real, because you you look at Adele, it's great writing, great singing, great minimal production. She sells millions of records. You look at Old Town Road, how's that now the biggest song ever
Right.
in music history? Two like completely different worlds, right? Both of them extremely successful. And one might say one is good and one is just like a trend, but one of them became the biggest songs ever. So there's no formula to this. There's no way to call it of what's gonna be great, what's gonna resonate. Like you kind of just don't know. Some of the greatest songs we probably never heard because they just didn't hit for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Question over on the left.
Hey, I'm Brian. I'm a recording arts student. Graduate in June. You talk about monitoring in so many different places, so many different ways, so many different speakers, so many different headphones. How do you listen to your mix, decide that, yes, this is an issue, and then go to your DAW and fix it, and then bring it back to that same place and go, yeah, I fixed it. Or, no, this isn't right yet. You bring it into your studio and you hear it and you go, no, this isn't right. It's a battle of things that are wrong on any speaker set that you use. So how do you go back to your mix and fix what you are physically hearing?
One is being able to identify what's wrong. And that always isn't the first listen. Sometimes it might take me a day to be like, this just doesn't feel right. And I don't know what it is. And I have to give it a couple of listens on a couple of different systems. And it's also just knowing your gear and being consistent with your gear and not constantly jumping in different cars and different whatever. Like, I know my iLoud speakers. I know my monitoring system that I use. I know what the car sounds like. And I'm only going to stay within there because I know frequencies and I know, again, vibrations and feelings. And if this ain't hitting like this song that I'm referencing, I need to figure out why and go back in. And again, like I said, it might take a day or so to figure out what it is. So knowing your gear and being consistent with your gear is going to be the biggest thing in being able to figure out what the problem is.
I agree. I was going to say the same thing.
Got another online question, please?
So Brandon, who is a RA grad and a music business grad, joining us from Charlotte, North Carolina, would like to know what brand and model of headphones are you guys using, since you both use the same one. They want to know what it is.
What do they call the Bear Dynamics? What I had, the 750s or the
I think with the gray.
The 990s.
Yeah, the gray.
With the gray.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not, we don't know the specific serial numbers. The joints with the gray.
Yeah, they're black on the outside, gray on the inside.
Bear Dynamics, I think they're the 990s if I'm not mistaken.
Sure.
Yeah,
let's go with that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. I don't know.
One of the things I tell my students in terms of like going back and referencing too is whatever genre you're working in, go to the Billboard top 10, listen to those, and make sure that when you play back your song, it can fit in the middle of those.
Yeah.
Like it sounds like it belongs in that list. And if your song sounds off somewhere, that's a good way to identify where the problem is my low end doesn't match or, so it's always good.
And I'll say real quick, like most days when I jump in the shower, I have a Bluetooth speaker that I travel with, again, consistency. And I'll let the Hot 100 run while I'm in the shower, while I'm getting ready for the day, just so I can hear stuff and know what's out. So I do that at least once a week because it's constantly changing.
Tune your ears.
Yeah, so I'll know what's going on.
Yeah. And to that point, all of us do different things to kind of, I think a lot of the people who stay successful and stay relevant over the course of years and genres and generations is I talk about this a lot. It's every generation's duty to feel like they should hate the next generation's music.
Oh my God.
And
boy,
I've never really understood that mentality. And my thing is, I'm getting ready to be 47 years old.
What?
And I still mix Gunna and Lil Uzi and all the young acts, and it's because I'm open to what they're doing. I don't have to like it per se. I'm not riding around in my car listening to Gunna and Uzi all day because I can't, understand half the stuff they're saying. But I understand that it's their craft and they're passionate about it. And my job as a mixer is to find out what do they love, how can I bring this to life so that they can express themselves. Mm-hmm. I don't have to love it, but I have to care about what they love.
Right.
And I think oftentimes we get caught up in our own generation's music, and every generation thinks their music is the best. Yeah. My mom used to tell me that hip hop was terrible, and you gotta, in my opinion, release that mentality, and you don't have to love the next generation's music, but at least embrace it to a point of understanding, or even if you don't understand why they love it, be just accepting of it. Because, the get off my lawn mentality and, oh, my generation's music is the best and y'all's music sucks, that's not gonna get you anywhere. Right. And you're gonna be dead in the water fast. Right. Staying relevant is about embracing new things, and some of it is actually jamming. Like,
creativity.
Some of Gunna songs are jamming. Yeah. I still don't know what he be saying sometimes. But.
Yeah, it's all good. Do we have another question on the right? Yep.
Hello, my name is Leah Rodriguez, and I'm a recording arts student. I was just wondering, because the industry is changing so much with technology, would you still recommend the older ways of recording just because that would be a rare commodity for an up-and-coming mix engineer?
Okay, so there's a lot of things that I think are specific to the person. But what I will tell you is, if you stick to too many older ways of doing things, there are other pieces to consider in the realm of success. It's not just the quality of something. And a lot of artists, because they're artists, they get caught up in thinking that quality is the only piece of that pie. It's a huge piece of the pie. But you still have to be able to move with the times. You still have to be able to do things in an efficient manner. So efficiency still has to come into the balance. The problem with doing things in a very old way is the efficiency component can start to deteriorate. So for instance, I can get up from here right now, go in the studio, pull up the Cardi B mix I did last night, do a clean version, then I could pull up another song, do another version of that, and da-da-da. If I was mixing on large format consoles, I would probably be able to get half of one thing done this whole day because of my schedule. But because of the way I work with technology now, I can get all kind of stuff done by the end of the day. So I'm saying that to say part of the keys to your success, efficiency has to come into that model. It can't just be about quality. So while we long for the nostalgic sounds and the way of doing things, it also can cost you in efficiency, which will cost you in success.
And it'll cost you a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like being able to pull up a mix in a hotel versus I got to go book a studio to go. Like, it's just not realistic.
Well, then just recalling a console, right? How long would that take normally, Especially if you're using the whole thing.
Yeah.
Every little knob, fader.
And even taking it a step further, technology has added to the quality of my life. Like, I can still get my work done, work with all different kind of artists, make all different kind of money, and I have all the family time in the world. I can go on vacation. I can take my laptop, and when the kids and my wife go to sleep, I can be up at 2 a.m. printing mixes. Doesn't affect my family time, and I get my work done. I would never be able to do that working on a large format console and trying to go on spring break with my family. So technology just adds to the quality of my life, period. And so I would say lean more towards embracing technology and the newer way of doing things. But that's not to say you can't implement some old school technologies or techniques, but like with everything else in life, balance.
That's good. That's good. Another question over here on the left.
Right here. Hi. You had said previously. Do I have? Yeah. Never mind. You had said previously that the gear changes and the craft doesn't change, so you should focus on the gear, but the craft remains important. So that being said, would your craft be a way to remain relevant? I'm asking this really on behalf of artists who want to, I know you do most of the mixing, but artists are also important. So would your craft be a way to remain important? And if so, how do you make your craft relevant? And my second question is, how do you get endorsements?
You want to take the craft relevant part?
How do you make your craft relevant?
It's got to be dope. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you're you. Like if it works for you, it works for you. I mean, it's relevant in your world as long as, like you said, as long as it's efficient and it's not costing you a ton of money the way that you work, then that's you. Everybody we work with works differently as far as artists goes.
And I think with artists too, is a lot of what our artist is trying to do is have an audience connect with their art.
Yeah.
So part of staying relevant is understanding how people connect. And I think a lot of artists get that wrong. So for instance, like again, this kind of is tying into, is it Leah? Tying into Leah's question, which is you have to understand how to connect with your audience and how to stay relevant in the connection piece. So for instance, a lot of people listen to their music in headphones. So recording the old school way to get this old school sound, you may be defeating the purpose because most people consume their music in headphones anyway. So there's certain things, and I'm not saying that's the total of what you were saying, but there's certain aspects of considering meet your audience where they're at, and considering how do I connect with them, what messages am I, even talking about the relevance even relates to what's going on in the world right now and what sticks and what doesn't. And there's certain things, like even in hip-hop music and rap music, there's been a long culture in rap music of women being disrespected and being called B's and H's and not all this kind of stuff. But in the wake of the Me Too movement and the way we are more educated, we are more understanding of it's incumbent on the men to really lead the charge in changing that culture, that I think a lot of artists would probably evolve and be like, you know what, it ain't cool to say that. It ain't cool to call a woman a B, or, you know what I mean? So I think all of that helps with your relevance too, is understanding the temperature of the culture that you're in. Like, so your music may not NWA may not be as cool if they came out right now. They were cool when it was cool to do that, and when we were all a little more ignorant to saying certain things and X, Y, and Z. And now we've gotten a lot more sensitive about what we say to each other, how we treat each other, and it shows. The minute you say something off brand, you get fired, or a TV station will let you go, or a radio station will fire you. And I think that's us as a culture evolving to understand that we got to be nicer to each other. And so as an artist, you connect with that, make nicer music. Like, we was just talking about that the other day, how like we were listening to a bunch of rap music and we was like, man, the rappers are so angry all the damn time.
All the time.
And that's why a lot of times they don't connect with a lot of their artists. Like a lot of rappers, and all the rappers we were listening to, they don't have huge followings or sales, We know them in the rap community and they're dope, but they're not connecting with their audience and they're not staying relevant because they're still angry. Like, you can't be angry for 20 years. You've been a rapper for 20 years, you're still mad?
Right.
Like, at some point, you gotta be happy about something. Like,
Oh, and how to get endorsements.
yeah.
That's funny. Which is like basically what NAM has turned into. It's people just walking around, going up to companies, asking for free stuff. Which is the number one way you don't get an endorsement, is because you come off asking them for stuff, and it's more of a what can you do for me versus what can you do for this company. You need to provide value. If they're going to give you free stuff, that means it's costing them money. So what are you doing for them? How it needs to be viewed as a partnership and not just a one-way street of just gimme. And a lot of it isn't going out and seeking it. Like, these companies will find you.
They will find you.
Because they'll think it fits in their brand as well as yours. And sometimes it's not a good fit. Like, you'll try it and you'll be like, this isn't for me. But majority of the time, they'll find you because it fits into what they're doing. And they're like, we don't have an artist like that or mixer like that on our roster. We need somebody that can reach that demographic of people that we're trying to sell product to, because it's still a business at the end of the day. So it's different ways to go about it, but don't approach them on some what can you do for me, because they're not with it.
And
That's
even
all
you
they
heard
hear.
me say a few minutes ago, I don't have a UAD endorsement, but I speak highly of them because I genuinely feel that way. I don't have to censor myself and say, I'm not going to say anything nice about UAD because they ain't endorsing me. It don't matter.
Right. Along those same lines, now, in terms of like endorsements and things like that, how are you guys staying relevant and approaching your social media? Like, do you keep a social media presence? Or are you trying to, keep your name? Are you doing anything to kind of keep your name to the forefront of people you know?
Yeah, and I try to do it, and I would agree with Tremaine. I would see Tremaine saying the same thing, which is I try to do it in an organic way. What you see on my social media reflects who I am. And I think a lot of times, and different people have different strokes for different folks. And some people like, flexing on the gram and posing in front of cars that ain't theirs. And I've never gotten into that. Like, if you see me posing in front of a car, it's mine. Like, and, I post pictures of my family vacations, and I post plugins that I like. I posted about Plugin Alliance. They have the AB metric thing that I posted not too long ago. I don't have an endorsement by them. I just really love the plugin. So I just try to be authentic. I post stuff all the time. If you follow me on Instagram especially, you'll see me posting stuff all the time where I'll be in my bag and I'll start telling y'all all kind of stuff. I'll start, dropping little nuggets of wisdom that I've picked up along the way. And so it's just about being authentic and representing yourself. And for me, being a family man, I'm not only I always look at my presence on the internet and what I say publicly. I'm not only representing me, I'm representing my wife, I'm representing my 2 daughters, I'm representing the whole family. So I have to be authentic and move in a way that I would be proud of. There's nothing that I've ever posted on social media that when my daughters get old enough, they couldn't look through my whole social media and feel like, oh, my daddy was all right.
Awesome.
So I live in a way that I'm proud, period. So it's about just being authentic, doing what you.
How about you, Tremaine? You got anything on that?
Same thing. Super authentic, and mine is mostly jokes and nerds.
Which are very funny, by the way.
Yeah, I'll just figure out a running theme with Lil Han or some other foolishness and just have fun, man. I'm not up there trying to be super serious and trying to profit off of it. I know a lot of people do that, but it's I get work. I don't have to depend on that 100%.
Gotcha.
I'm just having fun. It's, reflection of life.
Very good. All right, we got one more online question. So,
Aaron, who is a music production student joining us from St. Petersburg, would like to know, when you're swamped with work, how do you keep your creativity going?
For me, I always just try to remember why I love doing what I do. I love music, and that's really one of the. If we had a list of what it takes to be a professional, I think that's one of the things on the list is you got to know how to work through a ton of work. You got to know how to get it all done, and you got to know how to be a professional and get your work done even when you don't feel like it. I think that's the mark of a true professional, because you have to believe that every single, and I'm sure Tremaine can attest to this because he sees it from the behind the stage. Every time an artist goes out on stage, they don't feel like going out on stage. That's not an every night thing. For you think every time Beyonce go out there and go off and go crazy and have a great show, she don't feel like going out there all the time. She has a bad day just like the rest of us, but she's a professional. And what makes her great is that she's able to compartmentalize and say, okay, this is going on at home, but I got to go out here and perform in this show and be a professional. And I think that's the mark of a professional, is understanding that you may not feel like doing a whole lot of work, but you got to do it, and you get it done.
Yeah. When I worked for Jam and Lewis, somebody asked Terry Lewis that, because Terry writes all the songs, and they're like, what do you do about writer's block as a writer? And your job is a writer. And he was like, I'm a professional. They're paying me to write. So if I come in Wednesday and I don't feel like it, but the artist, our first session is Wednesday, I can't not show up and be like, I ain't feel like it today. No, they're paying a lot of money to be here. And some people, it's getting to that point in their life, that day might be the biggest day in life for them. To be like, I've been waiting to work with you forever, and then you're on some, I'm not feeling it. You can't do that.
You don't have the luxury of not feeling like doing it.
Nah,
if you're a professional and you want to be successful, and that goes for across the board, not just entertainment, but athletes. I mean, you think LeBron go out there and go hard like he go, and every single day he feel like doing that? No. And we all know, and we've had a highlight of Kobe's life and looking at his legacy, and I'm sure there were days Kobe didn't feel like going out there. And, and what's interesting, I made a point to my wife when we were talking about Kobe. Kobe had one of his best seasons when he was having the worst personal drama. When he was going through that rape case in Colorado, he had a nasty season. He went off, and they didn't give him the MVP, I think, because it just looked a little tone deaf to why he was going to court all the time. But that was the mark of a true professional right there to me. Those are the kind of things I look up to. That man is going to court every day and then flying the games and will go crazy on the court. And I'm like, that's a professional. So you got to learn how to work through whatever it is you got going on.
Well, it's been a great session. Guys, really appreciate you coming out tonight and being here for this. This is just awesome. Thanks, Leslie. Thanks, Tremaine, for being here with us. Appreciate your time. Have a great Hall of Fame, everybody. Grateful to have you here. Thanks.